Welcome to the Help or Be Brave podcast show, where we have great ideas on how we can help save lives. I'm Amy Ford.
And I'm Jessica Russo.
Okay, today we have kind of a little bit more unique guest because, although I kind of say that a lot, we do have the pro-life movement is very broad, but we haven't really had anyone on that they just help us talk about the issue.
Yeah.
And I know we're all about action, but this is action too, is by talking about it and about having conversations that are healthy.
Helping our actions be fruitful.
Yeah, for sure. And just about how every life is an actual life and not just, a clump of cells or a zygote or all the things that that Planned Parenthood or organizations like Planned Parenthood want to call what the baby is. And I think a lot of people want to have conversations about it, but they just kind of feel
I'm going to say the wrong thing.
A little nervous.
I'm going to mess it up.
Yeah, they're going to get mad at me or whatever. So Life Training Institute, let's go ahead and bring her on. Hey, Megan.
Hey, it's a joy to be with you.
So Maddie, our sweet Maddie that works here, she had so many great things to say about you that you guys just recently did a filming together with Daystar for Mother's Day. And she's like, you have to have her on the show. She's so amazing. And she's like, we just clicked and we became best friends. Like, I just felt like we just have known each other our whole life just by being with each other that short amount of time, which I love that. You obviously make people feel like home. So good.
Well, she's amazing. It was easy to be her friend.
I know. She really is so sweet. Well, tell us a little bit about your why. Like, why are you passionate about life?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes all the way back to being a kid. And I just, when I was little, I was all about people. Like, I just wanted to know people. I wanted to know their stories. I was a social butterfly. I loved great characters in books and great characters in movie. And I was always trying to pretend to be someone else. And I know a lot of kids do that, but it stuck around all the way through college. I was an art major first and then a journalism major. And the whole time, if I wasn't drawing people, I was writing about them and asking questions of them and wanting to know their stories. And so what that really rolled into for me was I worked as a journalist. I was writing people's stories. I was interviewing them and doing profiles. It was one of my favorite things. And I was sent by the community newspaper where I worked to cover a pro-life event. It was our local pregnancy resource center's annual banquet. So a big thing in our community because anyone who was anyone was going to be there. And so they asked me to go and cover this event. And the man that I work for now, Scott Klusendorf, the president of Life Training Institute, was the speaker that night. And when I heard him talk about really the issue of abortion, he was addressing the audience and he was equipping them with ways that they could talk about this issue with just people in their everyday lives. It just captured me. It was like it hit the deepest part of me, the kind of that tuning fork that we all have within us. And I'm still hearing it hum today. So the greatest thing about that was I was made aware of the issue of abortion and what it was doing in a way that I wasn't really aware before. And I think there are so many people who just aren't aware of how many people it touches.
Yeah.
And so I needed to talk about that in order to be able to sleep at night, right? I have to do something. The second thing was whenever I talk about this issue, I get to talk about what it is that makes us human and valuable. And that hits right at the heart of what I always love about people. And so it just kind of intersected in the perfect place at the perfect time as God tends to do. And here I am.
Yeah. So I guess
here you are.
It really connected with you so deep that so now you work for him. Yeah. So what do you guys do at the Life Training Institute?
Well, we are a pro-life apologetics equipping organization. And that's the big mouthful. All that really means is we work with people or groups to teach them how to talk about the issue well in today's marketplace of ideas. So while we are unapologetically a Christian group at Life Training Institute, we teach people how to make a case for the pro-life view that appeals to science and to philosophy. We teach them how to ask good questions and engage other people in conversation so that they can make a case for life where someone else will kind of go, oh, okay, I've never thought about it that way before. And, coincidentally, we find that those conversations, more than any other kinds of apologetics or reason giving conversations we have actually lead to gospel conversations. So it's pretty wonderful.
That is so true. And I've seen great, conversations about life. And then I've seen some very,
Destructive.
yeah, destructive,
Yes.
I guess. Yeah. That didn't really have much fruit from it. And, especially definitely on social media, that's something that we could see. But how do you feel like the best way to talk about this that actually starts a dialogue and not just shuts people down?
Wow. Well, I don't have like a silver bullet answer for that, clearly. I mean, I know you guys know that, but I think really what it is starting just by asking questions. When I meet a person, I don't know their story. When I meet them for the first time, I don't know their experience with the issue of abortion. And given the numbers that we see, we know that 1 in 4 women we meet at least has experience with abortion, whether directly or indirectly. Probably more than that with indirect experiences. And so if something like that comes up, I just want to know their story. Given what we do, a lot of times people know what I am about. They know that I'm going to talk about the issue, and so it kind of sets up for conversations already. But if I'm just out and about, I just want to know people. I want to talk to them and hear a little bit about who they are. And questions just have a way of drawing people out like that.
Yeah.
So I don't come in and just start making arguments or trying to dominate a conversation. I really want to and should be. I want to be and should be curious about the other person, because all of us bear God's image. So again, that goes back to just wanting to know who people are and what makes them tick.
Yeah, that's so true, because some people are more science and like more analytical, and then there are some that are more social justice or just super focused on the stories and the marginalized and then I know that are some people, even like when we're talking to donors, we think about from Embrace Grace perspective, like what would they get excited about, and some people are super into politics and the political side of it. And so just knowing your person of who you're talking to and helping them maybe see a different perspective than they have felt or have seen before, but in a loving way.
And starting with questions, you're really taking down defense mechanisms.
True.
Like you're investing in them. You're wanting to know, so to say, like their language. What language do you need to speak to them? Is it soft and lovey and fluffy, or do they want hard facts and real information, and they want to get down to like the nitty gritty? So that's amazing.
When we work with student groups, it's always a mixed bag, just like you're talking about. So it is good to kind of be aware, how is this person going to come at the issue? Even when someone is in opposition to me in conversation, or if I'm at an event and I'm giving a case for the pro-life view and I see that they're disagreeing, they'll raise their hand, they'll ask the question. It's kind of my job to figure out where that pushback is coming from, because oftentimes, like you said, it might be something intellectual, or it might be something emotional. It might be something personal. And so we have to do a good job of trying to feel that out if we're going to talk about the issue well.
Yeah. So what kind of organizations typically hire you? You mentioned students. Is that like college campuses or high schools, or is it more of like companies that want their employees to know how to talk about this?
Well, it's actually all of the above. But predominantly we work with students, and those students are typically high school and college age. Before COVID happened, we were going into schools and offering assemblies. So we would speak to the whole school. Typically it wasn't a public school, because unless we're doing some kind of a debate where it's been approved by all the proper channels and both sides of the debate are equally represented, then we're not really going to get that opportunity. I've spoken in public schools before, but it's been rare. Normally I speak in a lot of Catholic and Protestant high schools, sometimes private schools, who bring me in because it's kind of an interesting perspective, and they want the students to hear about it and have that discussion and that dialogue. And so when I do that, my favorite part is that I get to be in classrooms for the rest of the day, and that's where the real work happens, because then students are able to ask their questions, to voice their objections or their agreements, or their, I agree with you, but what about this? And so I really love getting to do that, because we're getting them at a time where it's a safe environment. I'm a safe person that they can ask the questions and I'm not going to get mad at them. And so that happens. We also work on college campuses a good bit, whether we're invited to speak to a group there or to a classroom there. And then other events too. We work with a lot of pregnancy resource centers, training their volunteers. Not that they'll use this type of language in the counseling room, but because this helps them be grounded. So
Yeah, because they have to tell
talent,
people what they do all the time. People always ask, what do you do? And so knowing how to talk about it without turning people off.
Exactly. And it would be my dream that the pregnancy resource center directors and Embrace Grace groups in the different churches all around the country, and no matter where you guys go, I mean, that you guys would be the voices in the community, so that when the reporter comes up and wants to know, well, what about this, that you're ready to go with an answer that will reach this, like I said, this kind of secular marketplace of ideas.
Are you looking for a way to get involved in the pro-life and pro-love movement? We have the perfect place for you and would love to invite you to join the Embrace Grace Revival Alliance. Come be a part of this group of passionate monthly donors, joining us on the exciting mission to help women with unplanned pregnancies be brave in their choice for life. You have the opportunity to play a vital part in providing single and pregnant women with spiritual, emotional, and physical support, saving lives of mamas and their babies, both physically and eternally. Visit www.embracegrace.com/donate to learn more.
Do you have any stories of any major conversions or someone that you trained that had, I'm sure you have tons of stories, but is there anyone that stands out of someone that maybe had their mind changed by someone you've trained or someone that you directly trained?
Yes, I have. I don't always get to know what happens after I leave a school, but I do have a few. I have a letter that I keep in my files. It actually hung on my refrigerator for a while, so it has a mustard stain on the but it was a letter from a school that I went into, and it was kind of a rough day. The students weren't very engaged, and I thought, man, they're just not with me on this issue. But their teacher, as an assignment, had them write a business letter by way of thank you and to tell me what they'd learned. So I got this big packet of letters, but one of them had a student who told me that she didn't really know what she believed about the issue, but she listened to what I said, and she heard one of the tools that we teach called Trot Out the Toddler, and she actually used that weekend to change her friend's mind from having an abortion.
Wow.
And so that one was just that. That's one life. And if I never hear anything else from the work that I've done for the rest of all time, that's worth it, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've also heard stories about students on the spot. It's rare for someone to change their mind right on the spot. But if they tell you that they have, then that's a very courageous thing. And there have been a few times when students have come to me and said, hey, I am more pro-life than I was, which is something. They've moved in a direction. Or you changed my mind completely on the issue. That has happened. And when that happens, I usually take the time to congratulate them and say, thank you. Well, congratulate them, but just to thank them for coming to me and admitting that.
Right.
It's hard to do that, right? It takes courage to say, my most deeply held convictions were shifted today because of something that you said. So super gracious and good on them. And also just this past weekend, I live at Summit Ministries in Colorado because my husband works for Summit Ministries. And we did an event this past week where we shared a story of Eric Cochran, who is a student who came through Summit Ministries, heard my boss speak, and went on to do computer programming work. So he developed apps for Android. And he kind of climbed the ladder. He was speaking at tech conferences, and he ended up at Pinterest, where he was doing some pretty impressive work developing these apps for Pinterest. And he learned on the back end, looking at some of the code on the back end, that people at Pinterest were actually blocking more religious conservative groups. One of them was Live Action, which is Lila Rose's organization. So
I heard about that.
Yeah, marking them as pornography sites. And so he was a whistleblower with Pinterest, and that made a big difference there. So the stories are vast, but what we learn most of all is, we hear oftentimes, young people are just not willing to hear you out on this. And I say, you could not be more wrong about that. I think that this rising generation is so energetic, so full of ideas and creativity, and they're not willing to settle for simple answers.
Yeah.
And so when we come in with a well-reasoned argument to show this is why the pro-life view is not only more reasonable, but more beautiful, they really do respond, and it's impressive.
That is so awesome. I love that you're too just planting seeds.
Yeah.
You know, even with the guy that worked for Pinterest, like who knew that, you know, hearing your boss talk years before, what the effect of that was going to be later, and the courage that he had in stepping out and being a whistleblower. That is amazing. And I'm sure there's so many stories that you probably have no idea how it may have saved lives and,
transformed minds and hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, how can people get connected to your organization?
Sure. Well, Life Training Institute is at prolifetraining.com. It's just all smushed together. And there are a plethora of resources at that website. You can watch some of our presentations and see just kind of how our basic training goes, or you could invite us to come and speak at your school or church or youth group or organization or wherever you guys happen to find yourself who are listening and watching. Also, we work with other organizations like Summit Ministries, for example. So students who come through here get to hear our speakers and have access to us and talk to us. So yeah, also my boss wrote a book. So Scott Klusendorf wrote The Case for Life. So those of you who are like, what is this whole apologetics deal? I was one of those people once upon a time, remember. That book is the best one-stop shop I know of, not just because he's my boss, but because that's where I still go for reminders and refreshers on how to lay out a pro-life case that anyone will be able to listen to and have dialogue about.
Yeah, I would think. Well, I've read the Case for Christ, and I'm assuming it's kind of the same concept of really laying out the history first, and then having talking points. And was there a reason why he named it similar? It's kind of the same kind of concept of changing minds.
Well, the book came out around 2006, so I think it may have been after the Case for Christ. I'd have to double check that. But yeah, the idea is there. How do you make a case for the pro-life view? And it doesn't go into a lot of the history of the pro-life movement. What it does is teach people, if I could sum it up in 3 things, although it goes much farther and deeper, it teaches you to simplify the issue when you're talking to somebody about the issue of abortion. Not to say that it's a simple issue. That's not what that means, because we know that in many ways, some of the things that bump into the issue make it very complex, certainly emotionally and, psychologically, even politically, we've seen.
Yes.
But morally speaking, it's a very simple issue because it all hinges on one question. What is the unborn? What is that? What is this entity that we're talking about? Is it human like us, or is it more like when we clip a fingernail or pull a tooth, that kind of thing? So we have to get the conversation back to that question. He teaches you scientifically how to answer that question, that science tells us from the very beginning the unborn is a living and distinct and whole human being. That's what all of us were when we came into existence. And then philosophically, we learn how to make a case for why human beings matter. That we don't matter because of something we can do or some function or some trait that we have, but we matter just because we are human, or we matter intrinsically. And when we learn to kind of navigate all of just those 3 things, we learn that it answers about 99% of the arguments that are out there against the pro-life view.
That's so good. I know that there probably are people listening that maybe even know someone that they want to have a conversation with, but they're just maybe a little too timid, or don't know if they have all the facts or all of the content that they need to be able to have a healthy conversation about it. So what you guys are doing is amazing, and helping people know how to talk about this in a loving and healthy way where people will actually listen about it. So thank you so much for that. We hope that everyone's listening will get connected to what you guys are doing. Hire them to come out and train your staff, or have them come out to your school, or donate to their ministry. Life Training Institute. Megan, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. And I have to tell you how much I love what you guys are doing at Embrace Grace. I have a good friend who started the group in Georgia. She supports my ministry, and she decided I got to get involved. And so I'm a huge fan, and I appreciate you guys so much.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, Megan, we'll talk to you soon.
This is such a valuable resource for people in the movement, people who have identified themselves as pro-life and want to know how to have the fruitful conversations, because sometimes we overcomplicate the conversation about what is the pro-life movement or what our organization does, and it jumbles it all up when we try to make it more complicated than it is. But this is an amazing resource.
Yeah, for sure. And to think about that, they come to schools. Like,
yeah,
I just spoke at my daughter's high school a couple months ago, I guess, and it's a Christian school. But I know she told me that some of her friends that are very pro-choice, like they kind of just really were not sure about me coming and sharing my story and all of that. And she said some of the ones she was worried about said something about your mom did good. But there were still a few that, were kind of like not, she said I would glance over and she just was shaking her head no every time you were talking. It is hard because sometimes they won't listen, but we're planting seeds, and you never know what she might remember or take away from that, no matter what her body language might have been.
Right.
And to give our kids and our students the courage to have this talk. And, my 8th grader, she is in a biblical truth class, and they kind of do a lot of, they talk through some politics or just hard issues that are out in the world. And, all year, she kind of was like, I didn't want to say my opinion about this because I didn't want to make, but I've noticed now that it's the end of the school year, she got a little bit more bold and bolder and bolder throughout the school year about talking about, some of the stuff that she feels strongly about, but she hasn't want to offend someone just because of the way she believes. But she learned how to talk about hard things without, being overly aggressive or overly pushing her own thoughts into someone else, but just being like, this is what I feel, and saying it in a loving way with a smile on your face.
Yeah, a smile can do a lot of things.
It can go a long way.
And what she said about really having the conversation, like learning a little bit about them, how they have a conversation, how they receive information. You can pick up a lot of things very quickly if you're truly listening in when someone speaks to you.
Yeah, talking their language, what's going to speak to them. Because I'm not super into the science part. I know and believe that a life is a life, but I know that there will be people that I'm going to be talking to that are going to want the more analytical, whereas I'm more on the emotional and nurturing side. But having both so that you know who you're talking to
you're
is
equipped.
huge. Exactly. So, well, I hope that everyone that listened today, I hope that you guys were inspired and would love for you to get connected to Life Training Institute. They are an amazing organization. And talk to them about having them at your kids' school or your universities or
your
even
youth group.
Or your youth group, right. These are important conversations. In a world like today, we need to be having these conversations. And so check them out. And Megan is awesome. And even reach out to her through the website. And she's totally amazing. And so if you are still unsure of how to get involved in the movement, check out helperbebrave.com. There are so many great ideas on how you can get involved in it, and also pray about starting an Embrace Grace group at your local church. It's an amazing organization, and we give you all the tools and how you can disciple and love on a mom through and several moms through their pregnancy and beyond. And we are the church, and so we want them to know who Jesus is because of our love. And so getting them plugged into a support system that's going to pick them back up and not kick them when they're down and point them back to Jesus is so important. We always say we can't fix all our problems, but we can point them to the one that does. And that's what Embrace Grace does. And so check out embracegrace.com and see how you can start a group. And don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Check us out on YouTube. You can watch there. Give us a like and subscribe. And also through podcast and through podcasts, it's iTunes and Spotify. So subscribe through there as well and tell your friends. We need more people listening. The more people that listen and the more people that act, the more ways we can make abortion unthinkable. So thank you so much for supporting us in this and for partnering alongside us, serving in the movement. Have a great week.